Everyone, and welcome to the latest ICBE Lunchtime Bites webinar with Betty O'Callaghan from Mojo for Leaders. The topic today is unconscious bias, the trusted 10. Betty has extensive experience in management leadership and human resource management, and passion is her coaching, as we covered a little bit earlier on. Just some of the ground rules. Over the course of 15 minutes, Betty will guide us through the world of unconscious bias, and she will also have some exercises, so we hope you have pen and paper ready. The presentation will take approximately 15 minutes with 5 minutes for Q&A at the end. You should all be muted, but if for some reason you're not, if you could hover over your screen and mute your mic just to avoid background noise. This function will appear when you hover over your screen. If you have any questions for Betty that we'll deal with in the last 5 minutes, if you could drop them into the chat function. If you hover over your screen, the chat function will jump up. And I'll be sending some messages to people as the session goes on. So, with no further ado, I'll hand you over to Betty and I'll mute my own screen. Thanks very much, Betty.
Well, thanks a million, Owen, for the introduction, and no pressure at all there in relation to sorting out the entire world of unconscious bias in 15 minutes. Listen, thank you to everybody who's joined us, and I'm conscious that a few of you, I'm actually conscious that a few of you may be joining us as we go along as well. As Owen was saying, by Irish time. Delighted to have the chance to talk with you here this afternoon, and we've been mentioning to you that we want you to have pen and paper to the ready. So what I'm really asking you to do then is we'll actually start with an exercise and we'll get into the whole thing then. So this is an activity that's going to take 3 minutes. So bear with me while we do this, and then we'll get into the whole area of the trusted 10 and unconscious bias. So what I just want you to do, invite you to do is, down along the left-hand side of the page, just put the initials of the 10 people that you trust the most. Kind of stay away a little bit now from family and actually use initials. This is going to be a private exercise, even though I'm conscious some of you are doing it in groups. We'll be exploring maybe some of the insights that have come from the exercise, but you won't actually be sharing whether the person next to you is in your trusted 10 or not. So keep it safe for yourselves here. So with your hands around the sheet of paper, off with you, and put on the 10 names of the people that you trust the most. And I'll literally be giving this about a minute. And so if there are any folk joining us, what we're just doing is on a sheet of paper down along the left-hand side, just put on the initials of the 10 people that you trust the most. Staying away from the family side. Okay. Don't worry too much about accuracy here, or even if you've got all the way to 10. We go with what you've got at this point. And I just invite you now, take a look at your trusted 10 and actually do a little bit of coding on them. So just in terms of their gender, you can just use a letter or whatever kind of mark works for you. Their education level, their age. We're not looking for accuracy around age. If you're within 10 years, you're absolutely fine. Marital status, nationality, whether there's a disability or not. So again, you'll find this is something that you can do quite quickly. And if you happen to be still joining, we're just jotting down the initials of the 10 people that you trust the most. And we're doing a little bit of coding around their profiles. And one final invitation then, and that is just put your own name in wherever you have room on your page, and just do a bit of coding on yourself. Okay, so thanks very much for participating in that. And, you know, as we get into this whole area of unconscious bias, I suppose it's kind of starting with looking at, you know, how like you are your trusted 10. Just as you look at them there, what are you noticing about your trusted 10 in terms of diversity? You know, how many are 20 years older or younger than you? I see from Michael Dell this morning there on LinkedIn where they've done a study and they're talking about the 18-year-olds that are joining our workforce now. So we're going to have 5 generations in the workplace for the first time in recent history. How many of your trusted 10 are working in a different organisation to the one you're in at the moment? And what's the gender mix? When I did this myself, most of the folk that I had in my trusted 10, a lot of them were women. And actually on the age group side of it, I hadn't a single person under 40. So a little bit of confessing here, this exercise has really helped me as well. You know, how many different professions are showing up there in your trusted 10? You know, how many are employed or unemployed or self-employed or maybe disabled in some way? How many are from Ireland? How many are from your home county? How many did you go to school with? How many might even be from your hometown? And, you know, you could kind of position this as just an interesting exercise where we kind of look at, you know, who are the folk that we absolutely trust. But actually, what are the implications of this for innovation, for developing talent, for our work relationships? How diverse a group are we ourselves who have the luxury of coming online like this to actually run through a session like this, a lunchtime bite? You know, what perspectives might we be missing? So love to get some feedback from you there on the chat. And just moving on then to how we form relationships. And this is really important and it's a real genuine thing. You know, we all have so many acquaintances that are out there, kind of level 1 acquaintances, people we meet, we socialize with, we work with in the community. And then there's some percentage of those that make their way into that more trusted category, level 2, you know, where we get on well. We call these people our friends. And then there's a certain number over time that will make it into that trusted few, the trusted 10. There's nothing special about the number 10, by the way. It can be 20. But we do all have this kind of solid core of people that we absolutely trust. And generally speaking, and we'll see in the chat in a minute if you start giving us input, but generally speaking, the people that are in that trusted few, they're very like ourselves. And so what we're talking about here is one particular bias. So, Owen, I'll disappoint, we won't deal with the whole entire world of unconscious bias, but actually pick this one, which is the like me bias, okay? And, you know, what is bias anyway? You know, bias, you know, none of us want to be biased. You know, it's a judgment made, you know, with compelling evidence to the contrary. But the unconscious one is one where we make that without being aware that we're actually doing so, okay? And I suppose this like me bias, sticking to this one, it shows up all over the place, definitely in our relationships, in how we think and make decisions, in what and who we value, you know, in who we socialize with, in who we choose to trust most deeply, even down to what we hear and what we see. You know, you've all seen the scene on stage where you've got, you know, loads of people doing some activity or another and a dancing bear comes on in the background. We don't see the dancing bear. You know, that's all part of this unconscious piece that we're becoming more and more aware of. And there's tremendous stuff coming out through neuroscience now as well that will, you know, make us, give us many more insights around this whole arena over the next period. But if we look at this in the workplace context, and it's only one place where it shows up, but if we look at our teams and if we look at our hiring, look at CVs and the kind of snap judgments we can make. Have any of you been the person who's had 100 or 200 CVs to run through to scan, you know? And then at interview, the folk that we're able to put at ease. And next thing is, it's about, you know, the development opportunities. Who are the people that we're going to give the tremendous, I suppose, the high profile or the very challenging or the very important development opportunities to? It's often the people that we trust the most. A lot of us are doing appraisals and reviews at this time of the year. You know, this whole unconscious bias and the like me piece can come in there too, as it can in informal interactions and mentoring. So, you know, it shows up all over the place. And this is only one of the biases, but it's one that's, you know, that's really useful to get an insight on and to become aware of. So, you know, why does it matter? I suppose, have it up there in terms of diversity and inclusion, all of these things that I'm mentioning here. The business case is well made in relation to them. What about our customers and market perspective? Innovation, that's so important. This whole piece about actually, creating environments where all voices and diverse voices can actually have a say and be heard. So if you have any input on best practices or stuff that you're doing in your own businesses around inclusion, we'd love to get that from you there as well. And so where does it come from? We're not doing this thing on purpose. And I suppose the thing is like that we have two levels of thinking. So here in our prefrontal cortex, this is where we think we're doing the stuff, So like it's higher, it's deliberate, it's rational, and it's thoughtful. But actually, the main work is going on someplace else. It's going on back in the reptilian brain, the ancient brain. It's the second level thinking. And this is where unconscious bias lives. It's lower, automatic, impulsive, unthinking. And actually, it has to be that way because the sheer amount of information that we get per second, 11 million bits, we can process about 50 bits in our conscious brain. So our unconscious brain has to manage all of this other stuff. So it's absolutely, it does lead to snap judgments and so on, but this is a powerful adaptation, and it originated, the like me one in particular, that served to protect us from physical danger way back when we were all out and about with tribes fighting and so on and so forth. But in today's world, similar to the fight or flight response, where we're kind of activating that in response to stress, this like me bias is operating against us. It's limiting our potential. And we can do something about it. I should mention just before we get into what we can do about it, what supercharges it? Okay, it's stuff like this. Busyness, the stuff that we kind of make heroes of, the kind of activities, I'm so busy. Stress really supercharges it. If we're multitasking, well, then we absolutely have to rely on it. When we're under time pressure, that's when it actually swings in even more than usual. So it's operating away in the background all the time. And then there are certain times when the like me bias just comes racing to the fore. So, what can we do about it? So I have 3 suggestions here. One is, can we raise awareness? Can we monitor ourselves? Make a habit of noticing and just calling ourselves on it. That's absolutely the starting point. Next thing is, talk about it. You can share exercises like the Trusted 10 or the questions that I had back in slide 6. You can start to bring those in into conversations. Another piece, and this is a massive piece, it's about making connections, making diverse connections with folks different to ourselves. 5 or 6 years ago, had I done this exercise, and honestly, I wasn't even aware of this, there was no diversity that I could talk of in my own Trusted 10, or even if I went out to the level outside of that, there were so many people that I'd worked in the same organization for a very long time. Most, if not all of my connections were there. Otherwise, it was family. I was busy. Where was I actually meeting other folk in the community? Where was I hearing alternative perspectives? And I genuinely wish that I had known about this stuff back then. It could have made a tremendous difference to how I operated. And there's another piece here as well. And that is like, it's not just about making the connections. It's actually asking questions and commit to listening. And sometimes because of this flipping bias, it's kind of like that even when we're listening, we can't hear. So actually, it's to really hear and almost to kind of say back and be humble enough to say, have I got it right? Have I heard you right? That can be very powerful, as can simple questions. If you're at meetings, making decisions, what else could be? Just literally opening it up in that way to invite in different perspectives. And finally, activating level 1 thinking, bringing yourself out here to your prefrontal cortex. Deliberately slow down, especially with key decisions like hiring, choosing people for promotion, the high profile opportunities. Who are we going to get to do this? And actually, just a final piece, I suppose, from me would be pay special attention to culture fit. Culture fit can be a proxy for actually, is this person like us? Is this person like me? So I suppose that's where I'll take it for now. I suppose I'm curious in relation to what you're finding in terms of what you spotted around the profiles when you looked at them yourself. I can see there that there's some feed coming in relation to, yeah, plenty like me. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with being like me. That's absolutely fine. And there's no suggestion here that you kind of, I suppose, dump your current trust at 10 and that they need to be different. This is much more about opening up to the benefits of reaching out and opening up and finding ways so that you really are getting that diverse perspective and involving the folk with diverse perspective, so that you can get the benefits of their contribution, and so that they can actually be all the more engaged in the workplace.
And Betty, I have a question while we're waiting for other questions to come through, and I'm curious, if you're in a work situation and your boss or somebody on the team presents symptoms of unconscious bias or bias towards something, and you're trying to bring up the topic, I imagine trust is probably a key issue, but any tips in terms of how to get teams to talk about it and not alienate somebody straight away?
Oh yeah, well, I mean, the first thing I'd say is that, if you're looking at somebody and you're kind of thinking, oh God, yeah, they're biased, you might as well be looking in a mirror, because we're all biased, So what I would say is that it's opening up the discussion is the really powerful thing. Simple stuff like that trust to 10 exercise, that's very, very powerful. Just asking questions that actually takes you out beyond the normal way that we do stuff around here, opening up the possibility. And actually what's really important as well is that as you reach out and as you begin to ask questions, it's to bring a spirit of curiosity, of a kind of an openness to yourself. And I suppose when you think about changing the world, the place to start is with yourself. And oftentimes what can be really powerful is to say, what's the smallest thing I can do here? What's the thing I could do this afternoon? It might be as simple as picking up the phone to somebody, that you haven't had a conversation with already, stopping and chatting with someone. You might be rushing out now to do shopping. There might be somebody that you bump into, somebody at coffee that you don't normally sit down with. And for leaders, it's about leading that kind of behavior and, demonstrating and showing the way yourself and modeling. And you don't have to be a leader either to do this. Awareness is a huge part of it.
Okay. Another interesting question to come through now is open discussion is important and the right thing to do, but what is the risk of overcompensating? So you realize that you're showing unconscious bias, and perhaps the pendulum swings the complete opposite direction, which I can imagine, if you had that mirror held up to you, and please let me know if I'm reading this wrong, but you have that mirror held up to you and it shows something you didn't think you didn't like or you didn't think was present, and you swing the complete opposite direction, that you have an adverse reaction.
Listen, I mean, I think the thing here is that, it's actually almost the spirit of what you bring to the thing, If you can, it probably sounds inappropriate to bring a spirit of love, but bring a spirit of openness to the whole thing, and then you won't overcompensate. It's about connecting with the person. This is about relationships. And yeah, we have this pendulum swing thing that can happen. If you start with what's the smallest thing I can do, you won't get into overcompensation. There's another thing as well, and there's conscious learning and unconscious learning. So we do have to overcompensate a little bit when we're learning to cycle a bicycle or drive a car. We definitely have to overcompensate because we have to be conscious of it. And then it actually makes its way into our unconscious, and we form new neural pathways. So there's a bit of work all right at the start. So I would say, no harm for a little bit of overcompensating, but connect with the person rather than with an act that I've got to do with next.
Oh, great. I see we're bang on 20 past, and we might wrap up. I'm conscious that we're only barely touching on the iceberg of this topic. And I can just see all the implications of once you start this conversation, and the expert guidance that Betty you could bring to the follow-on steps. And so I'd like to thank Betty from Mojo for Leaders for that really insightful presentation. If you've any feedback, please, we'll be sending out a note and we'll be putting up the video later on. And especially if you'd like to hear more about unconsciousness. And finally, thank you, Betty. Thank you very much for those insights. It was wonderful.
Thank you very much for participating.
Okay.
Thanks, Owen.
Okay, goodbye, everybody. And happy Christmas to all. Sorry, Roots.
Yeah.
Okay, goodbye.